Is your refusal to release details just another example of lack of transparency by this government? Where is
now,
it?
members, where was your analysis of the Treasury buildings?
Where's the cost-benefit analysis?
Where was your analysis?
Minister, I refer to an article by Hamish Hastie in the Sydney Morning Herald analysing sale of the Landgate offices in Midland Town Centre, which reported the property sold for $17.3 million. Industry sources have indicated that the rentable area of 13,700 metres squared of office space would normally be valued at around $68 million. Even if you discount an estimated $10.5 million in forecast building upgrades, the available information would indicate that the government has sold this office space at a discount of over $40 million. Minister, will you table the financial analysis that supports the sale of this asset, including justification for the claim of a $12 million saving over the course of the lease? And Minister, how do you justify the estimated annual rental cost of around $5.7 million, given that normal rental yield of around 5% of buildings of this value, with a long-term government tenant, which included a $10.5 million upgrade, would normally be around $1.4 million per year?
Thank you. So this was a proposal that was put through the problem opportunity statement, and this was assessed primarily by the Department of Finance. So in the assessment, they looked at a number of different factors. They looked at the cost of refurbishing the Landgate building in the future. They looked at the cost of current accommodation for the public servants. They looked at the fact that the building was being underutilised by a significant amount. And so through all that analysis, they came with an analysis. Now, members on the other side shouldn't be shocked by these types of arrangements. In fact, it was the previous government, the Liberal Party and Coalition government, who entered into similar arrangements for the refurbishment of the Treasury buildings in the CBD. Now, as I'm advised, the most costly accommodation across the entire public sector is actually some leases in relation to the old Treasury buildings in the CBD. Now, people would argue whether that was value for money, but people would look at the whole precinct and they see the redevelopments that occurred in that place, the activation, the fact that that building was left dormant for many, many years. The old Treasury buildings, and I think it was also the land, I think it was lands as well. So that was left dormant for many, many years. So as I understand, there was a premium price that was applied to the accommodation, and that taxpayers are paying a premium on accommodation in that building as part of a total redevelopment. Now, member, are you arguing that should have happened?
I'm arguing this is not a total redevelopment.
You're arguing that should have happened, because I think that's what you are.
I'm arguing you've wasted money.
So in relation to all of these types of projects, the most costly accommodation, and I think one of the longest terms in relation to lease costs, is that building that the previous government entered into. But anyway, anyone argues that looks at that building and says they shouldn't have done that reactivation? Of course not. Of course not, because the entire product is actually a benefit to the entire community. So, members, there was a cost-benefit analysis done. It was undertaken through the MLP process led at that time by the Department of Finance. Pardon? Independent of ministers, through a steering committee, and a recommendation was made.
Where is
now,
it?
members, where was your analysis of the Treasury
buildings?
Where's the
cost-benefit analysis?
Where was your analysis? Where was that?
I wasn't here at the time.
Oh, you weren't there.
Where's yours? Where's yours?
So as I said, you make a lot of comments about these types of projects, but the reality is, just as we saw with the Treasury buildings, where we had basically an empty, dormant building that was subject to graffiti and other impacts for many, many years. And I'm going to say it's something that we never did, and that was, under our government, we never did that. But you entered into a relationship with a developer to pay a premium accommodation price for a product that benefited the entire city and the entire community. That's what you did. And you go and read the media statement, because I did that recently, where you outlined the Treasury buildings. You actually put in that media statement there wasn't a premium accommodation price being paid per square metre.
So is the Midland a premium accommodation?
Now you're saying that Midland doesn't deserve any redevelopment. That's what you're saying.
No.
Does
saying you paid too much for it.
No, I'm saying what you put in your media statement, that there was a premium price paid on the accommodation members. So in relation to this, it was independently done, the steering committee recommended, and that was adopted. And as I said, when you look at these factors, you look at the age of the existing building, the fact that it was underutilised because of changes that have happened to Landgate. You look at the accommodation from the other areas where some of those new agencies moving in would be paying. You look at the cost of redeveloping that alone if it was undertaken by the taxpayers. There's a number of different factors that were put into place, and the recommendation and the key decision made at the time was that this project be supported. Now it means public servants returning to Midland. It means a greater activation of the Midland area. It means accommodation for public servants in that area. It means supporting, for example, the whole Metronet precinct and the fact that we're going to be building a brand new station. I think the idea of, again, revitalising a suburban asset for public servants and making an efficient use of space is actually a good outcome. So members,
massively
as I said, you go and explain the premium price that your taxpayers are paying because of the deal you've done, then come back into this place.
Supplementary question.
A supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Minister, is your refusal to release details just another example of lack of transparency by this government?
Then,
let's go to the issue of transparency. How much let's go to the issue of transparency. You may recall when we won government, there were two projects that we inherited. The Perth Freight Link, which we soon sort of, made sure it didn't happen, but also the FAL, the contract for the Forestwood Airport Link. Two business cases that we sought copies of. In particular the FAL, because we were building it. We were building it, we wanted to know what were the assumptions that were underpinned. So two business cases. We wrote to the opposition. I think how many opposition leaders, I've lost count, but we kept writing to opposition leaders saying, can we have access to your business cases? You're no longer in government. They're proprietary of the previous cabinet. I'm not allowed to access them. Can we have copies of the business cases? And what did they say? No. So projects, they're no longer in government. There are projects, one of them that we're delivering, and they refuse to provide access to those. So why wouldn't you do that? Why, given that you're no longer in government? There are projects, one project that we were delivering and would have actually maybe assisted us in those projects, and you refuse to do that. Yeah. If you look on our websites, if you look at the summary PDPs that we display, we go through Infrastructure Australia and Infrastructure WA. Now, in particular on Infrastructure Australia, which we've been operating under our entire term, because most of our projects we sought and received Commonwealth funding members. Again, something they never did. We sought and received, and the business cases that we had to submit to get funding through the Commonwealth are significant. So we go through that process, and we work through all the processes, and we make good decisions on behalf of the taxpayers of WA. Yeah.